Welcome back to the deep dive. It is great to have you with us. Today, we are shifting gears in a pretty significant way.
We really are.
Usually when we talk about technology transformations or modernizing a business
Yeah.
or chasing that elusive concept of high performance, the conversation, it just almost immediately gravitates toward the hardware.
Oh, absolutely. It's the tangible stuff. It's the stuff you can put on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. We talk about the code, the servers, the cloud architecture, the speed of deployment pipelines. We sort of obsess over the machinery of the business.
Mm-hmm.
We look at these complex diagrams of, serve farms and lines of code, and we think, okay, this is it. This is where the value is. This is where the magic happens.
It is the natural inclination, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we like to think of these complex systems as purely engineering problems. If the output isn't right, we just assume the machine needs a tune-up.
Right. Tweak a setting.
Yeah, you just adjust a parameter, upgrade a processor, or, rewrite an algorithm. It feels controllable. It feels objective. You can measure clock speed. You can measure bandwidth. You can look at a dashboard and see, green lights or red lights.
It feels safe because it's math. It's binary.
Yeah.
But today, we are looking at the people at the heart of that machine. We are taking a stack of research, specifically focusing on Chapter 10 of our source material regarding employee satisfaction, identity, and engagement. And we are going to unpack a core premise that, frankly, I think a lot of leaders, they just miss it entirely.
It's a premise that is so often dismissed, unfortunately. I mean, it gets labeled as soft skills or, the dreaded HR fluff.
Oh, yeah, the fluff.
You hear terms like employee happiness or satisfaction or feelings, and you can almost see some executives they just tune out.
Their eyes glaze over.
Totally. They're thinking, we're running a business here, not a summer camp. I pay them to work, not to be self-actualized.
Right, that old school mentality. Do your job, take your check, and go home. But the mission of this deep dive is to prove that employee happiness isn't just some warm and fuzzy metric to put in a quarterly newsletter to make everyone feel good.
No, not at all.
We're going to look at the hard data that shows it is a hardcore predictor of profitability, market share, and productivity. This isn't about feelings for feeling's sake. This is about the bottom line.
And when you really dig into the source material, the connection is, well, it's startlingly direct. It connects the dots between technical practices like DevOps, continuous delivery, lean management, and actual human psychology.
How so?
Well, it turns out the way you manage your servers actually affects how your employees sleep at night, how they view themselves, and crucially, how they talk about you to their friends when you aren't in the room.
And just to hook you in before we get into the weeds, I want to tease a stat that I have to say it absolutely floored me when I read it. We're going to dig into the methodology later, but the research found that companies with high employee engagement grew revenues 2.5 times faster than those with low engagement.
That is not a small margin of error. I mean, that is massive.
It's huge.
That's the difference between being a market leader and a company that's, frankly, struggling to keep the lights on. If you could buy a piece of proprietary software that promised 2.5 times revenue growth, you would pay millions for it.
You'd have a whole team on it.
A whole team. You'd have a whole team dedicated to just installing it and maintaining it. But here, the software is your culture. And often it's just treated as an afterthought or, something you get around to when you have time.
Exactly. And we're going to get to the aha moment regarding why simply hiring the best people. That classic strategy of just hunting for rock stars is actually, believe it or not, the wrong strategy if you don't have the system to keep them. It's really where feelings meet finance.
It is. We're going to cover how to measure loyalty using something called the Employee Net Promoter Score, which is a fascinating twist on a marketing metric you probably already know. We'll talk about the concept of identity. Do you actually align with your company? We'll look at how tech tools, believe it or not, create happiness through automation, and then we have to take a hard look at the diversity data in the tech industry, which is, well, sobering, is putting it mildly.
Sobering is definitely the right word. But let's start with that ROI of feelings. Let's talk about measuring loyalty. Now, most of us know the Net Promoter Score, or NPS, right?
Yeah, it's pretty common now.
You buy a pair of shoes online, or you fly an airline, and a day later you get that email asking, how likely is it that you would recommend us to a friend or colleague?
Correct. It's become the gold standard for measuring customer loyalty. It was developed to be a single, simple number that tells you if a business is fundamentally healthy. The theory being, if people are willing to put their own reputation on the line to recommend you to a friend, you are definitely doing something right.
It cuts through the noise.
It cuts through all the noise of those long, 50-question surveys nobody wants to fill out. But what's so fascinating here is that the researchers applied this exact same lens to employees. They call it the eNPS Employee Net Promoter Score.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit,
Yeah.
because the question changes slightly, right? Instead of recommending a product, what exactly are they asking the employees?
They asked two very specific questions. First, how likely is it that you would recommend your organization as a great place to work to a friend or colleague?
Okay, the whole company.
The whole company. And second, how likely is it that you would recommend your specific team as a great place to work?
And those are two very distinct things, aren't they? I mean, you could love your immediate team, the people you sit next to, the people you grab lunch with, but absolutely hate the wider company culture.
Or the opposite. I've seen that too. You love the brand, you believe in the mission, you're proud to work for the company, but your manager is a nightmare and your team is dysfunctional.
So measuring both gives you a diagnostic tool. You can pinpoint where the problem lies. Is it a systemic, company-wide issue, or is it a localized leadership problem?
Exactly. But the scoring, and this is really important to understand because the math is a little brutal, it's on a 0 to 10 scale.
Okay, walk us through the buckets, because I think most of us are used to, school grades where anything above a 60 or a C is technically passing.
It is very different from school grades, very different. If an employee gives a score of a 9 or a 10, they are a promoter.
Okay, 9s and 10s are promoters.
These are your enthusiastic champions. They're your evangelists. They stay longer, they cost less to retain, they create more value, and they actively recruit other great people. These are the people who, when they're at barbecue and someone asks, "So how's work?" They light up.
Yeah, they don't give you the one-word answer, fine.
No, they say, "You wouldn't believe what we're building. It's amazing. You should send me your resume. Seriously."
Okay, so 9s and 10s are the good guys, the goal. What about a 7 or an 8? In school, an 8 out of 10 is a solid B. That's pretty good.
Not here. Here, a 7 and an 8 are classified as passives.
Passives.
They are satisfied, sure. They aren't burning the building down. They're not, crying in the bathroom. But they are completely unenthusiastic. If a recruiter from another company calls with a slightly better offer or a shorter commute or just a more interesting project, they are gone.
No loyalty there?
0. They are transactional. They are there for the paycheck and nothing else. They don't have that deep emotional connection that drives what we call discretionary effort. They do their job and they go home.
So they're kind of a neutral weight. In the calculation, they don't help your score, but they don't technically hurt it either.
In the raw calculation, they are ignored. But in reality, a company full of passives is a company that is stagnating. It's a company without a soul. Now, everything else, 0 to 6, are detractors.
0 all the way up to 6.
All the way up to 6. And this is crucial. A 6 is not okay. A 6 is a detractor. These are your unhappy employees. They are expensive to replace because they quit more often, but the real damage is what they do while they are there. They can hurt the business through negative word of mouth, both internally and externally.
That feels harsh, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a 6 feels like a passing grade. A 6 is fine. It's meh. But here, it's actively negative.
In the context of loyalty, fine isn't good enough. A 6 means I am tolerating this job. It does not mean I'm engaged with this job. Let me put it this way. If you asked your spouse, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend being married to me? And they said 6. Would you feel secure in that relationship?
Ouch. No, definitely not. I'd be calling a lawyer, or at least a marriage counselor, immediately.
Exactly. A 6 is a warning sign. It means the bond is broken. And the way you calculate the final score is you take the percentage of your promoters and you subtract the percentage of your detractors.
So the passives, the 7s and 8s, they just completely fall out of the equation.
They're ignored in the final calculation. You only care about the gap between the lovers and the haters, so to speak. So if you have, say, 20% promoters and 40% detractors, your score is negative 20%.
So you can actually have a negative score. It's not just 0 to 100 like a test.
Oh, absolutely. And many, many companies do. If you have a negative score, it means you have more people actively bad-mouthing your company than praising it. That is a crisis state. It means your internal culture is actively working against your recruitment and retention efforts.
Okay, so that's the metric. Now, the source material, It looked at high-performing organizations versus low-performing organizations, specifically in the context of DevOps and technology. What did they find when they looked at these eNPS scores?
The gap was massive. It wasn't even close. Employees in high-performing organizations were 2.2 times more likely to recommend their organization as a great place to work compared to their counterparts in low-performing orgs.
2.2 times. That's more than double the likelihood that your employees are out there acting as recruiters for you, telling their smartest friends, you have got to come work here.
That's your best recruiting pipeline right there. It's free. You don't need to pay headhunters thousands of dollars if your own people are doing the work for you.
And what about for the team-specific question?
The gap was still huge. They were 1.8 times more likely to recommend their specific team, which tells you it's not just a big, abstract company thing. It's the day-to-day reality of the work.
And this brings us back to that business impact we teased in the intro.
The so what factor.
Yeah, the so what, because I can just hear that skeptical CFO in the boardroom saying, okay, so they're happy, good for them, where's my money?
Exactly. Why should shareholders care? Why is this anything more than a vanity metric? Well, the source cites a really important study that found companies with highly engaged workers grew revenues 2.5 times as much as those with low engagement.
That's the stat. It's just staggering. If you're a leader looking for a lever to pull for growth, it turns out that lever isn't in the marketing department or the sales department. It's in your culture.
And it goes even further. They looked at the stock market. Publicly traded stocks of companies with a high-trust work environment, which is a huge driver of engagement, they outperformed market indexes by a factor of 3 between 1997 and 2011.
A factor of 3. Wait, see that again?
By a factor of 3.
I mean, if you told an investor there was a metric that could predict beating the market by 3x, they would be obsessed with it. They would build entire algorithms around it. They'd analyze it every single quarter.
But because it's labeled employee engagement, it often gets sidelined. People think trust is, nice to have, but not a revenue driver. The data says the opposite.
Why do you think that is? What's the mechanism there?
Well, think about it. Trust reduces friction. When you trust your team, you don't need endless meetings and sign-offs. Things move faster. When you trust your leaders, you can pivot the company's direction quicker. When you trust the data your systems are giving you, you make better decisions. Low trust is like pouring sand in the gears of that machine we talked about earlier.
And high trust is the lubricant.
Precisely.
So high eNPS equals high growth. We've established that. But how do we get there? I mean, the source material digs into what actually drives this eNPS. And it's not just about, free snacks in the break room or ping pong table, is it?
Interestingly, no. And that's where a lot of companies get it wrong. They try to buy happiness with perks. But while perks are nice, the source points to much deeper things: process and purpose.
Okay, what were the correlations they found?
They found strong correlations with 3 specific things. First, the extent to which the organization collects customer feedback and actually uses it for product and service design.
Wait, really? So asking customers what they want makes employees happier. That seems like an external thing. Why does that affect the developer sitting in their cube?
Because nobody wants to build something useless. Imagine this. You spend 6 months of your life building a feature. You're crunching overtime. You're missing dinner with your family. You're pouring your heart and soul into it. You launch it, and then crickets. Nobody wants it. Or worse, the customers actively hate it.
That is just soul-crushing.
It's demoralizing. It kills the spirit. It makes you feel like your time was wasted.
Like your life was wasted in a small way.
Exactly. But when employees see that their work is based on real needs, that the organization is actually listening to the people it serves, they engage. They feel like they're solving real problems for real people. It gives the work meaning.
It connects the employee to the reality of the market. It's not just an abstract task anymore. What was the second driver?
The second correlation was the ability to visualize the flow of work. Seeing the product go from a developer's keyboard all the way to the customer.
That makes so much sense. If I'm just turning a screw on an assembly line and I never see the finished car, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's just a screw. But if I see that car drive off the lot, I feel a distinct sense of pride.
And in software, this is often the biggest problem. You write a snippet of code, you commit it, and it just disappears into this black hole of QA and staging environments and release committees.
You have no idea if it ever even made it to production.
Right. But high performers, they have that visibility. They have CI/CD pipelines. They know that the line of code they wrote on Tuesday morning is helping a real user on Wednesday afternoon. That feedback loop is addictive in a good way. It validates their effort almost immediately.
Okay, so customer feedback and visibility. And the third?
The third was identifying with the organizational values. The big takeaway here is that employees are loyal when they see the connection between their daily work and positive customer outcomes. They need to feel like they are the good guys. They need to feel that the organization stands for something they can genuinely get behind.
That is a perfect segue into the next big concept from Chapter 10, which is identity. Because identifying with values isn't just about nodding your head at some mission statement on a poster in the break room. We've all seen those posters.
Oh, yeah. Integrity, synergy, excellence.
And we usually just ignore them. They become wallpaper.
Total wallpaper.
Yeah.
No, this concept of identity is much, much deeper. The text makes a really important distinction between simple job satisfaction and organizational identity.
What's the difference? Can you break that down for us?
Sure, job satisfaction might just be, I like my hours, or the commute is easy, or hey, the coffee is pretty good. It's about the conditions of employment. It's about comfort.
Okay.
Organizational identity is, I align my personal values with this company's goals. It is an existential alignment. It's the difference between saying, I work for Google and I am a Googler. It becomes part of how you see yourself.
The researchers actually used a 5-question test to measure this. And I think this is a great mental check for anyone listening. I want you to just pause for a second and ask yourself these questions about your current job. I'll read them out slowly. Number 1, I am glad I chose this organization over others.
And that's the baseline, isn't it? Regret is the absolute opposite of identity. If you're sitting at your desk thinking, man, I should have taken that offer from the competitor, I wonder if that other company is still hiring, your identity score is effectively 0. You're already mentally checking out.
Number 2, I talk about this organization as a great place to work.
That's the advocacy piece we talked about with eNPS. Are you an ambassador? When you're at a dinner party and someone criticizes your company, do you defend it? Or do you join in on the complaints? That willingness to attach your personal reputation to the company's reputation is a huge indicator of identity.
Number 3, and this is a big one, I am willing to put in effort beyond what is expected.
Discretionary effort. That is the gold dust of productivity.
Yeah.
You can't contractually oblige someone to care. You can't write a line in an employment contract that says, you must have a brilliant idea in the shower on Sunday night.
Right.
That only happens when someone identifies with the work so much that the problem becomes their problem. They're thinking about it because they genuinely want to solve it, not because they're billing the hour.
Number 4, my values and the organization's values are similar.
This is so crucial. If you personally value transparency and your company is super secretive, you will constantly feel friction. If you value craftsmanship and quality and your company just values speed at all costs, you'll feel dirty every time you ship code. That misalignment is exhausting, and it absolutely destroys identity. You feel like you're compromising your own ethics just to do your job.
And finally, number 5, the organization cares about me.
And that last one is just so powerful. It's about reciprocity. You cannot identify with an entity that you feel is indifferent to your existence. If you feel like a replaceable cog in a machine, you will act like a replaceable cog. Why should I commit my whole self to you if you won't commit to me? It has to be a two-way street.
So they took these 5 questions, they measured the identity score using a scale, and then they mapped it to the technical practices. And this is where we find something called the virtuous cycle. It's figure 10.1 in the text. Can you walk us through that flow diagram?
Yeah, this is really the core argument for why DevOps isn't just about code, it's about culture. The diagram shows the input on the left as continuous delivery and lean practices.
So all the technical stuff we usually talk about,
Right.
releasing software fast, small batches, reducing waste, all that.
Correct. The research then shows a direct arrow from those practices to stronger organizational identity. And then there's another arrow from stronger identity to better organizational performance, which they define as productivity, market share, and profitability.
I want to pause on that link between continuous delivery and identity. Because on the surface, that sounds, well, it sounds a little weird. Why does being able to deploy code 5 times a day make me feel like my personal values align with the company? Why does a fast server equate to a happy soul?
It comes down to 2 words: control and validation. The source material explains that continuous delivery allows teams to validate their ideas fast. When you can have an idea in the morning, build it in the afternoon, and see real customers using it by the evening, you feel in control. You feel like a craftsman, not a cog. You have agency over your work.
Right. You're not just following orders from a 200-page spec document that was written 6 months ago. You are testing hypotheses. You're an explorer, not just a factory worker.
Exactly. And you can compare that to the old way, the traditional waterfall method that so many large legacy companies still use.
Paint that picture for us. What does that feel like for a developer?
The old way is requirements being handed down from on high in these huge monolithic batches. You work for 6 months, maybe a year, on something you didn't decide on and maybe don't even believe in. You're just typing what the spec says.
You're a code monkey.
You're a code monkey. Then you throw it over the wall to a separate QA team. Maybe it gets released a year after you started it. You never see the customer use it. And if it fails, you get blamed, even though you had no say in the design or the strategy. That is immensely demotivating. It creates a complete disconnection from the outcome.
You feel helpless. You feel like your contribution doesn't actually matter because all the important decisions were made in rooms you weren't invited to months ago by people you've never met.
You do, and the test makes a great point about burnout here too. A mismatch of personal and organizational values is a key contributor to burnout. Identity helps reduce that because when you believe in what you're doing, the stress feels different.
It feels like good stress instead of bad stress.
Exactly. If I work hard all weekend to build something I truly love and believe in, on Monday, I'm tired, but I'm also happy. I'm energized. If I work hard all weekend to build something I think is stupid and pointless, on Monday, I'm just burnt out. Continuous delivery gives you the tools to build things that matter faster, and that directly feeds your sense of identity.
There is a fantastic anecdote in the source material involving Netflix that just perfectly encapsulates this. I love this story.
Yes, the Adrian Cockcroft story. He was the seminal cloud architect at Netflix, really one of the masterminds behind their famous culture of freedom and responsibility.
And he was talking to a senior leader at a big old traditional Fortune 500 company. And this leader asks him the question that everyone asks, where do you get your amazing people?
Right. Assuming Netflix has some secret cloning facility in Los Gatos or they're buying people from Mars or something, he just assumes there's a Netflix type of human that is just genetically superior to everyone else.
And Cockcroft's answer was just perfect. He looked at the executive and he said, I hired them from you.
I hired them from you.
That just, it gives me chills every time I hear it.
It implies that the talent is everywhere. The amazing people were already working inside that Fortune 500 company, but they were stifled. They were trapped in bureaucracy, unable to deploy, unable to experiment, buried under layers of management. They were the passives or detractors on the eNPS scale. The culture at Netflix didn't create the talent, it just unlocked it.
It really drives home the point that you can't just buy high performance by hiring a bunch of rock stars. You have to build the stage for them to perform on. You can hire the best guitarist in the world, but if you give them a broken guitar and put them in a soundproof box, they won't sound very good.
And if you don't build that stage, somebody else will. And they will hire your best people and let them perform there. It's a stark warning to legacy organizations. Your best people are waiting for you to change, but they will not wait forever.
Let's move on to section 3. We've talked about loyalty and identity. Now let's talk about good old-fashioned job satisfaction and the role of our tools, because there's another diagram here, figure 10.2, that looks at a different but related virtuous circle.
That's right. This one maps continuous delivery and lean practices directly to job satisfaction, which then, in turn, leads to that same outcome of organizational performance. It's a parallel path to the identity one we just discussed.
And how are they defining satisfaction here? Is it just, being happy? Is it smiling at your desk?
It's more specific than that. The source defines satisfaction as having the right tools and resources to do your job effectively, and also whether the job makes good use of your unique skills and abilities.
Makes good use of your skills. I think that is the key phrase right there. And this brings us to what I like to call the paradox of automation.
Yes. In the popular imagination, automation is scary. It's robots taking our jobs. It's Skynet coming online. It's the fear of being replaced by a shell script.
But in the context of this research, automation is a massive driver of job satisfaction.
It is.
Why is that? Why does having a script run a test automatically make a human being happier?
It comes down to a fundamental question of what humans are good at versus what computers are good at. Computers are absolutely excellent at rote tasks. Menial, repetitive, boring checklists, moving data from column A to column B, running the same regression test 500 times in a row. They don't get tired, they don't get bored, they don't get distracted by a text message from their friend, they just execute.
In humans?
Humans, on the other hand, are terrible at rote tasks. We get distracted, we make typos, we get bored, and we zone out. But we are excellent at judgment. We are good at weighing ambiguous evidence, making complex decisions, being creative, spotting patterns that aren't explicitly in the code.
So when you automate something like the deployment process or the testing process?
You are taking the work that humans hate and, frankly, are really bad at, and you're giving it to the machine. This frees up the human's cognitive load to focus on the things they are uniquely good at, weighing the evidence, thinking through complex problems, making critical decisions.
Which is satisfying.
Exactly. Using your brain for complex, high-judgment problems feels good. It's engaging. Checking boxes on a spreadsheet for 8 hours feels terrible. It feels like a waste of a human life. It creates what the engineers at Google call toil.
Toil. Define that for us.
Toil is work that is manual, repetitive, tactical, devoid of any enduring value, and that scales linearly as the service grows. It's the kind of work that burns people out.
So good automation like proactive monitoring or deployment automation directly increases job satisfaction because it removes the drudgery, it eliminates the toil.
It's the difference between being a chef who gets to design the menu and cook the food versus being the person who just has to stand in the back and peel thousands of potatoes all day long.
That is a perfect analogy. Automation peels the potatoes so you can actually cook the meal.
And the research backs this up completely. Good DevOps technical practices predict higher job satisfaction. If you force your best engineers to peel potatoes manually all day, they will quit. If you buy them a potato peeling machine, they will thank you and go on to cook you a Michelin-star banquet. It's really about respecting the human capability.
So we have established that tools matter, culture matters, identity matters, and these things drive the bottom line. But now we have to turn to section 4 of the outline, the diversity gap. The source material takes a very, very hard look at the numbers in the tech industry and how this relates back to performance.
Before we even get to the numbers, we have to reiterate the business case, because so often diversity is framed purely as a social justice issue or a PR issue or some kind of moral obligation.
Or nice to have.
A nice to have. The source material is very clear. Diversity is not just a moral imperative or a political statement. It is a performance booster. It is a straight-up competitive advantage.
What does the research actually say on that front?
It cites a number of studies. They show that teams with diversity, specifically regarding gender and underrepresented minorities, are literally smarter. That's a direct quote from the research. They achieve better overall team performance, according to Deloitte, and they have higher collective intelligence.
Collective intelligence. That's an interesting term. It implies that the group itself has an IQ.
It does. It means that the group as a whole is better at solving complex problems than a homogeneous group. Even if the individuals in the homogeneous group have higher individual IQs, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
And why is that? How does that work in practice?
Because when everyone thinks the same way, you have blind spots, massive blind spots. You miss things. If everyone on the team has the same background, the same education, the same life experience, they are very likely to arrive at the same solution and agree with each other.
Which feels good. It feels like harmony.
It feels efficient. But complex problems require lateral thinking. Diverse teams cover those blind spots. They bring different perspectives, different questions, different ways of framing the problem that lead to more robust and innovative solutions. They challenge each other's assumptions more effectively.
So the business benefit is crystal clear. Diverse teams win. But the data from the 2017 study demographics presented in the text, it's pretty bleak.
It's very bleak. They looked at gender first. 91% of the respondents in their study were male.
91%. That is just... It's a staggering number. That is almost total dominance of one gender.
Only 6% of respondents were female, and 3% identified as non-binary or other.
That is just overwhelmingly lopsided. And looking at the trend lines mentioned in the text, it's not even like it's getting better fast, is it?
Arguably, in some sectors, it has actually gotten worse. The text notes that women made up 27% of computer and information management roles in 2008, but that number was down to roughly 7% in a field like systems administration by 2011. It's a regression. In some areas, we are literally moving backward.
And when you look at the team composition, like who is actually sitting next to you day to day, it gets even more stark.
It does. A full 33% of respondents reported working on teams with 0 women.
A third of tech workers have no female colleagues on their immediate team. That creates an incredibly isolating environment for the few women who do enter the field.
It does. Being the only one in the room day after day is a heavy psychological burden, and it gets worse. 81% work on teams that are less than 25% female. So even where there is some female presence, there is rarely anything approaching balance.
What about underrepresented minorities? What did the data show there?
The numbers are similarly unbalanced. 77% of respondents identified as not being an underrepresented minority. Only 12% said yes, and 11% preferred not to say.
So we had this massive disparity. Now, the source material tackles the why, and it explicitly addresses a very controversial but unfortunately very persistent myth, the innate brilliance myth.
Yes. This is the pervasive, often unspoken belief that some people, usually men, are just naturally suited to tech and that others, usually women, aren't. That there is some kind of coding gene that is linked to the Y chromosome.
The idea that women are better with people and men are better with things.
That old stereotype. And the source material refutes this heavily.
How so?
It cites research showing there is no significant difference in aptitude for STEM fields between men and women. The brains are capable of the work equally. The biology simply does not support the disparity we see in the workforce.
So if the aptitude is the same, why are the numbers so wildly different? Why do we end up with that 91% male statistic?
It is the environment. The belief in that myth, even if it's subconscious, creates a hostile culture. If the dominant culture believes women aren't built for this, then every mistake a woman makes is seen as proof of her gender's collective inability, whereas a man's mistake is just a mistake, an individual error.
That creates a pressure cooker. You feel like you have to be perfect just to be considered average. You're representing your entire gender with every line of code.
You are. And that constant pressure, that hostility, it leads to attrition. The text mentions a specific statistic on attrition that is just heartbreaking.
What is it?
Women leave the tech industry at a 45% higher rate than men do.
45% higher. That is the leaky pipeline that everyone talks about. You can focus all your recruiting efforts on hiring diverse candidates, but if they are walking out the back door faster than you can bring them in.
Exactly. It's like pouring water into a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. And they aren't leaving because they can't do the work. They are leaving because of the daily experience. The text explicitly lists harassment, microaggressions, and unequal pay as the driving factors. It's not that they can't do the math. It's that they don't want to deal with the toxic culture anymore. They get tired of fighting for basic respect.
And this brings up the critical distinction between diversity and inclusion.
Right. And they are not the same thing. Diversity is just the numbers. It's the hiring stats. It's asking how many different kinds of people do we have in the building? Inclusion is the culture. It's the feeling of being valued and belonging. It's asking how do those people feel once they are here?
I've heard the saying, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance.
That is a perfect way to put it. And you cannot have sustainable diversity without inclusion. It's impossible. If you hire people into an environment where they feel alienated or undervalued, where they are detractors on the eNPS scale from day one, they will leave. And then the leadership shrugs and says, well, we tried to hire for diversity, but it just didn't work out. But they never fixed the machine. They never looked at the culture that was actively pushing people out.
It all connects back to the beginning of our conversation, doesn't it? If your culture is toxic, your eNPS score tanks, your identity scores are in the basement, and your best people, especially those who are underrepresented and have to deal with all this extra friction, they just leave.
And your organizational performance suffers as a direct result. It is all one interconnected system. You cannot optimize the code without optimizing the team. You can't have a high-performing machine if the human parts are rusting out from neglect and hostility.
So we have covered a lot of ground. We've looked at the scores, the psychology, the tools, and the difficult demographics. Now let's talk about taking action. Section 5. We can't just leave our listeners with this big, complicated problem. Based on the source material, what can leaders actually do?
Based on everything we've talked about, there are 3 clear mandates, 3 things you can start working on Monday morning.
Okay, give us the first one.
First, invest in the tools that remove drudgery. Automation isn't just about speed. It's about respecting your employees' brain power. Look at your team's workflow. Sit with them. Where are they peeling potatoes? Where are the manual checklists? Where is the toil? Find it and automate it.
Make the job worthy of the human who is doing it.
Exactly. If you have smart, creative, expensive people doing dumb, repetitive tasks, you are failing them as a leader. You are wasting their potential and you are wasting your money.
Okay, what's the second mandate?
Second, create feedback loops. You have to ensure that people can see the value of their work, connect the developer to the customer, that builds identity, share the customer success stories, let the engineers sit in on support calls, let them see the real-world impact of what they build. Whatever you do, do not hide the customer from the people doing the work.
Don't let people work in a vacuum. Give them the why.
And third, prioritize creating inclusive environments to stop that leaky pipeline. It is not enough to just say, we believe in diversity. You have to look at the daily experience of your team. You have to actively fight the innate brilliance myth. You have to mentor, you have to sponsor, and you have to track your eNPS and your promotion rates by demographic to see if different groups are having fundamentally different experiences inside your company.
The text also provides some specific resources for this, particularly around diversity and inclusion, for people who don't know where to start.
Yes, they mention the Anita Borg Institute, which runs the massive Grace Hopper Conference. In 2017, that conference gathered 18,000 women in technology.
Which just proves the talent is out there. It's not a pipeline problem in terms of a lack of people. It's a connection and retention problem.
Absolutely. They also mention Geek Feminism, which is a wiki resource full of strategies and information, and Project Include, which offers open-source diversity strategies that any tech company can adopt and adapt. These are playbooks you can use. You don't have to invent this from scratch.
So there really are no excuses. The data is there, the business case is there, and the resources are there.
Indeed.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just summarize the mission we started with. We set out to prove that tech transformation is actually, at its core, a human transformation.
And I think the evidence presented is just overwhelming. Loyalty, as measured by eNPS, identity, and job satisfaction are not soft, fluffy metrics. They are the lead indicators of high performance. They are the difference between 2.5x growth and stagnation.
You cannot buy this culture. You can't just install it like a piece of software. You have to build it day by day. You build it through continuous delivery, through lean practices, and frankly, through basic human respect.
Respect for people's time, respect for their skills, and respect for who they are.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over. And it goes right back to that chilling Netflix quote. I hired them from you.
It is a haunting line, isn't it? It just sticks with you.
If your organization isn't investing in these practices, if you are not giving your people the right tools, the right culture, and the ability to see their impact, who is currently hiring your best people right now? Who is building that stage and unlocking the potential that you are currently stifling?
It is the question that every single leader should be asking themselves every single morning when they wake up.
And for you listening, think about your own team's eNPS. If I asked you right now, on that scale of 0 to 10, would you recommend your team to your smartest friend? One number immediately pops into your head. Are you a promoter? Are you a passive? Or are you a detractor? And more importantly, why?
That's the analysis that leads to real change.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.